Recording on Thursday, June 5th, 2025 at 2:03 p.m. Eastern Time with Mr. John Cullen and Mr. Ian Burlingame. You guys can go to the links. You can find their Twitters, YouTube, Substack, Subscribe Star, all that good shit, Patreon, whatever the fuck, all that good stuff. We're supposed to do this yesterday, and then I lost power, so I sat around like a fucking idiot, just sweating like a pig. And you guys were just talking about Netherlands. There had been a porn bot, which I think you get most of them, just every time I would post a podcast, it would be like, "This is great for opportunities to earn money," and like I know it's a bot. I'm very aware it's a bot, but I finally was just like I was like, "Jump off a building, kill yourself." I hadn't been sent more than 2 seconds that the screen whited out, blocked out, and said, "If you delete your post, you can get your Twitter back in 7 days." So I just decided I'm not going to know what the news is for 7 days. And that's about it. And in that time, I think Ukraine has bombed Russia's nuclear bombers, and you guys are now talking about Netherlands. So, for better or worse, that's what a
Of
sever.
all the time to take a 7-day sabbatical.
What it's you know what I was sitting there yesterday. I was just looking at the trees, literally, and I just thought like I have no one on my mind that I hate right now, and I can't help but think that's intertwined with it. So for me, I was like, look at the sun hitting the leaves, like
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And I was like, nothing in my mind is like, we gotta kill these fuckers. So I'm gonna shut up and John's gonna share the screen. And but yeah, this is as my mom calls these
Let's
episodes, these are my start and release episodes where I have two guests
let's
on and then I just kind of push the ball and
let's make
yeah.
some let's make some orange juice. Wow.
Yeah. The last time we were together, EM, you were talking about the Netherlands, and the fact that when you
Uh,
brought it up, you kind of shocked me because there's a nurse in Netherlands that's been following my posts, and she's been sharing a bunch of stuff with me. Like Netherlands punches way above its weight. You got to dig into this. She mentions the House of Orange, and yet I know so little about it. I mean, when I was a kid, we learned that Peter Stuyvesant bought New York for $24, and it was New Amsterdam. And so before America was a British colony, we had Peter Stuyvesant, and this was New Amsterdam. But then in school, I went to public school. I don't know that they explained how this went from a Dutch colony, New Amsterdam, to New York. How did it turn into an English place? Who is the House of Orange? Why does it seem that Netherlands is punching above its weight? And this was just a couple weeks ago that you and I had that session, and so I was eager to get back with you to hear more about it. And in the last 48 hours, Geert Wilders absolved the government or something. I mean, he walked out. So this couldn't be more timely. So Tommy, I'm
Mm.
with you. I'm going to sit back, shut up, and let EM
The,
kind of catch us up on
there's a
what.
running inside joke on the show
Yeah,
for a couple of years, and it's the deeper in the farther we go into a subject, the more likely it is that that's going to shift the simulation into something and that subject happens. I swear it's happened so many fucking times.
it's
It
kind of weird.
gets a little eerie.
I
I
mean,
bet
we
Pee-wee.
were planning to do the
manifesting,
Yeah.
show, right? So we were planning to do a
manifesting.
show on Netherlands, and all of a
Uh,
sudden, Gear Wilders pulls the plug. So EM, I'm going to flip it to you to
Yeah.
tell the story. I'll pull up supporting materials. Like if you mention people by name, I'll pull up stuff and share the screen with the audience. But I don't know anything about this House of Orange, Nassau. Why are the Netherlands like so pivotal? I was sharing that Kaspersky thing the other day, and it looked like all the traffic that was going on was going through there. So why don't you kind of walk us through it? Assume we know nothing but $24, Peter Stuyvesant, New Amsterdam, and take us through it.
all right. Let's start with the New Amsterdam to New York. Let's go back to the end of the last conversation and then the writings I've been doing, right? That 1688 was a hostile takeover by the VOC, Dutch East India Company, of the British East India Company. And what you have to realize is that the British East India Company was nobility. That's the aristocracy and the crown. In the Netherlands, it was a bit different because it was a republic. There was the House of Orange and there was some other nobility, but it was more of a republicanism form of governance. if I'm going to unleash some really unpleasant business in the world that I've been working out, a new, for all intents and purposes, slaver system, I don't want my brand on it. I don't want my name on it. I don't want my face on it. I want somebody else to have that. So the British over there, they've weakened themselves in a civil war, which we funded and backed and supported. We've been working with the Catholic Church for many years to destabilize the British Isles because we want to go over there and take that over. That's a headquarters that we can secure. That's a martial power capability, right? These are war fighters. These are naval
So let me
powers, sea
test my
power.
understanding. So for for my sake, for the audience sake, because
Yeah.
so we've got the British East India Company,
1600, chartered in 1600. Mhm.
and the Dutch East India Company,
Chartered
and
in
these are,
1602. Yeah.
but these are two different entities. These are
Yes.
so this is like Bacardi Rum Puerto Rico and Bacardi Rum Cuba are completely different companies with no connection. We just steal Cuban patents, right? They don't, we don't, right? Is that right?
Yes.
So British East India
I would think
Company
of
and
it
Dutch
more
East
like
India are completely
Coca-Cola and
different.
Pepsi. I would think of it more like Coca-Cola and
Okay.
Pepsi. Okay.
So
And
completely different companies, effectively
completely
very
different.
similar things, but doing
Correct.
similar stuff.
Correct.
Okay.
Both preparing, both in the early stages of being global empire, maritime global empires.
William
They worked out some
Cavendish.
things. They worked out some, concepts and ideas and structures, and they were going to set out to be a global empire. They
Got
were
it.
both early on. In order to, okay, so give me a second. The financing and capital that came for the Dutch came from Venice, because I think we touched on, right?
Mhm.
The Venetians backed the Crusades, back to the Crusades against Byzantium, and for all intents and purposes ended Byzantium. It would take another couple hundred years to finally fully fall. But Byzantium, the Byzantine Empire, never recovered fully from the Fourth Crusade and the Latin states, etc. That was intentionally done because it was revenge by the Praetorians, because who are the Venetians? They're the surviving Praetorians that Constantine in 312 crushed. And they took their wealth and they went into the marshes, or Venice, and they built out Venice and they became the Venetian Empire. They brought about their revenge of crushing the Byzantines, Constantine's people and Constantine's
Wow.
empire
Oh,
by the
mackerel.
1400s. They had to flee from there, however, because now that revenge opened up the entire eastern side of Europe to Muslim invasions.
And so
Because
this is wild. This is the Bank of Venice. And I just pulled this up on Wikipedia. And it's, I mean, spot on. Look at this 12th century Byzantine Venetian War of 1171.
yes,
This has been going on
for
for some
1,000
time.
years.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
really,
this is
it goes back to the 300s when Constantine crushed the Praetorians, who would go on to become the Venetians.
wild.
Okay,
This is the Bank of Venice.
the Bank of Venice. So this is
Banco del
all
Giro.
old Praetorian wealth and money stolen from the
This is
Roman
wild.
Empire, which gutted the Roman Empire. So they go to Amsterdam in the 15th century, having to now flee because the Mehmet II and the Ottomans were coming for them,
Mhm.
right, and coming for Europe. And now that protection that had been the shield on the eastern flank was removed out of revenge. And so they went the opposite side of the continent. They went to the Netherlands. And they were welcomed there because the Netherlands was a burgeoning sea power, it was very similar to the Venetian power and system and banking, etc. They mount the 30 Years' War The 50 Years' War and the 80 Years' Wars. They bankroll and back that. What does that do? That destroys hereditary princes on the continent.
And when you say they, you're talking about Mehmet, the
No,
Ottomans?
no, no. The Venetian bankers. The
Venetians.
Venetian
Okay.
bankers backed those wars. So
Okay.
that's from the west down
Uh-huh.
east. And the Turkish Ottoman, Muslim invasions were coming from the south up and from the east to the west. What was that about? All of that on the Venetian banking Praetorian side was about breaking hereditary princes
Hmm.
so that they could take the land and so they can embed their, liberal democratic financialist system across all of Europe.
So this
But
is like Arab Spring, circa
it's exactly
1400. Yeah.
exactly what it is. It's
This is
exactly where you
wild.
think color
This is wild.
revolutions and coups
This is
and all.
crazy. This is
Okay.
wild.
These are the Praetorians. They had ruled Rome for 300 years. From Augustus to Constantine, they had ruled Rome.
Right.
Because the Praetorian Guard were not just the guard of the emperors, they were the guard of magistrates, of senators, of nobles, of generals. It wasn't just emperors that the Praetorians killed. And Constantine, after about 100 years of this being set up, went back and crushed them and defeated them at Milvian Bridge. This is who these people
Huge.
are. Okay. This is how they work. They work as the Praetorians. They work as the security and intelligence apparatuses.
Let me share this with the audience because
Yep.
this is spot on. So this is Mehmet,
Yep.
and he's the Turkish.
Mehmet II. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so he's a sultan. He claims the title of Caesar of Rome
Yes.
based on the fact that Constantinople had been the seat and capital of the surviving Eastern Roman Empire since 330 AD by Constantine I.
Yes.
The claim is soon recognized by the patriarch of Constantinople.
Yes.
This is wild. This is a guy from Turkey who
Yes.
says, "Yeah, I'm now in charge of Rome."
This was what would lead to, prior to this, the 1054 schism had occurred, where the Western Roman Empire, in the form of the Roman Catholic Church, was trying to reclaim supremacy of the Roman Empire. But you had a problem. The legitimacy of the Roman Empire was actually in Constantinople and the Byzantines.
And Mehmet takes advantage of this in 14.
And Mehmet takes advantage of it.
Right?
That's right. What Mehmet takes advantage of is that the old Praetorians who had become guards, the ones that had survived with their ill-gotten gains, had become Venetians in the Venetian mercantilist system and the Venetian bankers. And they drove.
That's like Palm Beach, right? West Palm. That's like West Palm Beach.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So they drove the 1054 schism to restore Rome as the center of the Roman Empire in the guise of the Vatican, of the Roman Catholic Church. Then they drove the Roman Catholic Church to war under the guise of fighting Islam and the Crusades to actually war with Orthodox Christian Byzantine principalities and princedoms. And ultimately, in the Fourth Crusade, they sacked Constantinople and stole vast sums of wealth, equivalents of trillions of dollars today, and all the artwork and all of the et cetera, to try and erase Constantinople and the Byzantines, every trace of them being the new, the successors of Rome. That 200 years later, because Byzantium could never fully recover from that, 200 years later, Mehmet comes in and sacks Constantinople. The Venetians, Praetorians, how did they gain and maintain their power in the Roman Empire from, Augustus to Constantine? They were the intelligence services. They were, the IC. They were the security services. They were, for all intents and purposes, the high-end national law enforcement, like the FBI. All of our entities, all of our structures go back to the Praetorians. And I've written a whole series of threads on this Praetorian problem, mob state problem, et cetera. Okay. They have to get out of there. That's too hot. They go to Amsterdam. They fall in on Amsterdam. They fall in on this, burgeoning Dutch maritime power.
So they're like retreating. So they leave Venice, So they went originally from Rome to Venice. Venice is,
Yep.
if you guys don't know, up here on the map, it's up here in the
Yep.
corner. It's up in the northern part of Italy.
Yep.
And then what you're saying is that because of the pressure coming out of Turkey, they head further northwest to
Yes.
the
Amsterdam.
Netherlands,
Yeah,
to
the
Amsterdam.
Netherlands. Amsterdam specifically.
Whoa.
Right.
Okay. All
And
right.
what they do is they embed themselves into Amsterdam. They embed the Praetorian structures, systems, banking, finance, and it's all done through color revolutions and coups, and it's all about liberal democracy, and it's all about religious freedom and all of this. But in reality, what it is it's destroying hereditary princes and their relationship with their people. So it's removing accountable leaders
Mhm.
and replacing it with this liberal democratic concept and idea. And that takes several centuries, right? It takes some centuries. By the 1600s, so about a century on from when they got there, maybe a little over a century, the continent's pretty hot and there's not a lot of Dutch. And even though they could flood the surrounding areas and make it hard for people to invade, people could still do it, right? So they needed another headquarters. They needed another people that was similar, and they need a people that had a strong structural system like Rome, in terms of, hierarchical, imperial kind of system that they could hijack. And they needed a sea power because that's what they are, sea power people, maritime powers. And they needed a warrior, they needed the soldiers to go fight for them, to basically destroy Europe and take Europe and conquer Europe and the rest, as much of the rest of the world as they could. And so they went over, they fostered the English Civil War. They funded the English Civil War. They got traitorous British lords. There's 7 particular lords. I can't remember the names of them. They bought Parliament. They backed the industrialists they were developing in the Thames River. They bought off the guilds, which were the regulators of their time, and that had a 10,000 man militia force in the form of the bully boys, which were, the young men going through the guild schools. And they deposed the king and they tried to take over in the 1640s. Unfortunately, it didn't quite, and they sent the Protestants back from the continent to England to, color revolution, essentially, the English peoples, the Anglicans, etc. It didn't work then because of Cromwell.
Okay.
They had a Gaddafi-like or a Saddam-like kind of guy, right? Putin kind of like guy that stepped in. And when initially he thought he was fighting in the right cause, and then he realized, no, we're being invaded, right? It's just a passive aggressive Praetorian kind of invasion. And so he fought it. He died. His son couldn't hold. Excuse me.
But now we're up to like
1650s, 1660s. So they restore, and they beheaded a king. They beheaded our king with traitorous lords, King Charles I, right? Okay. And they sell this whole idea with down with princes. King Charles is, he's against the people, etc. King Charles had to be torn down and beheaded because he was actually fighting for the people. He did not want this to happen in England.
How did the Praetorians that come up from Venice kind of engage or win over, or I mean somehow
they bought them off.
Well, the House of Oranges though started earlier, right? There was a German and French marriage or something like that,
Orange
right?
and Nassau. Yeah, it's an older house. It's just a German principality. It doesn't have any real power. It doesn't have any.
So it's more just figurehead. It just everybody throws them around, and it's not really that.
Correct, because it provides you 2 things. It provides legitimacy to what you're doing,
Gotcha.
right? Because I get a royal charter, so that provides legitimacy. It also allows me to be unaccountable because I can point to the prince or the king or the nobles and go, well, they're the ones doing that, not us. We're on your side. We're for liberal democracy. We're for Protestantism and your right to worship as you will.
Plausible deniability.
Plausible. It's the exact same shit.
We still see it. We see it across Europe. I mean,
it's USAID.
Yeah.
Well, how many?
You ask how do they do it? They did it like USAID is doing.
The
Yes.
United Kingdom
Yeah.
has got, a king, a prince,
Exactly.
whatever,
Ooh, okay. So
and
very good.
parliament, right?
Yep. So what did they do? What do they do is they take King Charles II. He's the drunk womanizer. He's got no power. He's got nothing. He's an older man at this point. They put him back on the throne. He doesn't have any power, right? No legitimacy. The monarchy, for
Absolutely.
all intents and purposes, had been gutted at that point. It
Right.
lost its legitimacy. And the nobility had been, mostly wiped out
So the
by
House of Orange,
Cromwell.
so the House of Orange ends up really as the figurehead. It's the
Correct.
Venetian
Well, in
bankers that move
1688,
in.
they do the Inglorious Revolution. They called it glorious, but it's not. They do the Inglorious Revolution where the House of Orange is brought over, married to a traitorous Stuart daughter. So King James II's daughter is married.
Oh,
So that gives further legitimacy. They send William over with an army backed and funded by the Venetian banks, backed by the Dutch banks,
yep.
right? They
William the
stop.
Silent, right? Is that
Yes,
the
yeah, yeah,
Dutch
yeah,
Revolt?
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And he'd done a great job. He'd proven himself to be a very capable general, and he had fought on the banks, in the 30 years and the other wars, and he'd proven to be a very good general, not just a figurehead lord, but an actual very good general. So they send him to the United Kingdom at the invitation of Parliament, at the invitation, traitorous Parliament, which wanted power for itself because it wanted this liberal democracy in the United Kingdom because that would give them power and wealth and the ability to steal and manipulate and all of that, not the king. It would take power. What it would do is, in this case, essentially, is the president would have no power in our system. The Congress would have total and absolute power. And through that, they would corrupt the judiciary. That's in essence what happened. It's what they're trying to do here, right? That's why there's all these
Right.
fights going on
It's
in the
very,
courts
yeah.
right now. Okay. Same thing. 1688, they send William of Orange over with an army backed and supported by the Dutch bankers.
They call this the Glorious
The
Revolution.
Glorious Revolution. It wasn't. It was a coup. It was a
Right.
military backed coup, right?
Right.
And they put William of Orange
There you go.
on the English throne.
All right, so hang on. Let's share this with the audience.
Yep.
So the Glorious Revolution, also known as the Revolution of 1688, was the deposition of James II and VII in November 1688. He was replaced by his daughter,
Yep.
Mary, and her Dutch husband,
Yep.
William of Orange, a nephew of James, who thereby had an interest to the throne, irrespective of his marriage to his cousin Mary.
Correct.
Two ruled as joint monarchs of England, Scotland, and Ireland until Mary's death in 1694, when William became ruler in his own right. Holy moly.
It was his wife. Now, this is going to get to the estrogen-based leadership in Europe right now, but it is his wife who was the one that the Dutch backed.
This is wild.
Okay. We've had estrogen-based leadership in Europe since the 1600s. It fights very differently. We pay attention to all these masculine wars and all that, but who drove those? Who created those? What was the purpose? Look at the matrilineal lines in Europe. Some of them go back 1,000 years unbroken.
This is wild.
Okay. So 1688, they put a Dutch, they put Mary, traitorous Mary,
Yeah.
and a Dutch prince on the throne, and they changed, and forgive me, I can't remember the acts, but they changed the rights of succession to where only a Protestant could succeed to the throne.
Okay.
That was the argument. The argument was James II was Catholic, and well, that wasn't allowed. Probably wasn't Catholic. Probably was just the psyop that was done, just like we do now, right?
Yeah, here you go.
And the Dutch, right? The continental Europeans through Holland, right, or the Netherlands, have been in control of the British Empire ever since. Well, what do? You, again, back to what we were saying, you don't want your brand on what you're going to do.
Right.
You don't want your board and your shareholders to be recognized as the ones driving all of this. So they fell in on the British crown, the British system, what would become the British system, what would become the United Kingdom. They helped shape and guide all of that. And they did most all of their efforts through the British East India Company,
Ah, okay.
right? So think of the VOC as the holding company,
Hmm.
right? And they acquire another major competitor and they control it through a cutout, right? A neutral third entity that's, it's a special purpose vehicle that regulates all of it, so you get the, plausible deniability and the cutouts, et cetera. And that's the Bank of England. The Bank of England is not a bank. The Bank of England is a massive holding company. Banking is only one of the things that it regulates and manages and governs. The Bank of England has been totally and absolutely controlled by the Netherlands since its inception.
So, who are some of the big names today that people may not associate with Netherlands that in fact have roots there? Would it be like Rothschild? Would it be, so who are some of the big names? Like which families are, do we trace back to this? Like where is the power really in Netherlands?
Well, there's two seats of power. There's the real power, which is still in the Netherlands itself, with certain families and individuals, and I have no idea who they are. I look at the world in terms of factions, right? I don't look in the world in terms of nodes unless I have to. What I can say, though, is that the British royal family, which are not, they're not Dutch, they're Germans, that the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha changed their name to Windsor in 1914 or 17 or whenever the hell it was, but they're Germans. And they're the second German family to be put on the throne since William and Mary. The first was the Hanoverians, and that's King George and King George III that was on the throne when the Americas had a revolution, which was anything but. It was just another PR stunt, another psyop. It was a push for self rule, right? Back to what you were saying. Why did the name of New Amsterdam change to New York? Well, it's because the rebranding that happened in the hostile corporate takeover from the Dutch East India Company to the British East India Company. The Dutch East India Company wanted to remove their names from everything, their titles from everything, except for the good stuff, right? The good stuff they want to hold on to. The
Oh,
bad stuff they all want to put in the British brand. And they created the British brand because we didn't call ourselves the Britons before.
right,
We were English, Scots, Welsh, Irish, Cornish, right?
right.
They created the whole label, the whole brand, so they could put all this on the British. And
Sun never sets on the British Empire.
sun never sets on the British Empire, right?
That's the
So
brand. I mean,
that's
that's
the
the brand.
brand.
That's the brand.
So the Netherlands has two centers of power. One is still the Netherlands. The other one, again, you want to separate out the governmental power. You want to separate the bureaucratic power so you're not, and that's Brussels, right? We say that Belgium was created because it needed to be a buffer between France and Germany. No, it was carved out as a separate thing so that the Dutch could have another separate, arm's length, um,
And in
another
particular, you mean the
brand.
Hague? You mean the
Yeah,
Hague?
all of it,
Yeah.
all of it
Okay.
to this day, the EU to this day, and all of that, right? That's another brand and set of brands that's been created because you got to think these
So
people
this is like
think,
Procter and Gamble. I mean, these
yes,
guys are running everything,
Johnson and Johnson,
and nobody has any idea that they're
yeah,
running everything because of the way they've branded everything.
branding.
So they've
These
got the
people, yeah,
justice. So they've got basically European, Western European justice running out of The Hague in Brussels. They're basically pulling the strings in England, in
yes,
London,
yes,
without people
total
realizing
control.
it.
Yeah, total control. They own Parliament. They own most of the city councils. They own most of the, local city. Um, they own the provinces. They own the crown completely. And how do they
Oh,
do it? They do it in the same way the Praetorians did in Rome. There's a reason that the Byzantines used Varangians as a way
explain,
to prevent the Praetorians from rising.
explain.
Okay. You know who Clay Martin is? I know Tommy does, but
Uh,
you know
yeah,
Clay.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
he's
yeah.
done
I met
shit.
Clay. I met
He's,
Clay.
he's
Okay,
done Clay
okay.
on here. Yeah.
Oh, okay. What? So
Yeah.
forgive me. I'm
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm old and forgetful,
Yeah,
and
me
you're
too.
good.
um, Clay said something once in a talk with some very, wealthy people. He said that all those assets you're building, all these capabilities you're building, those belong to you or your head of security.
Hmm.
And he said you could have heard a pin drop. Well, whoever owns your intelligence, the framing of the world you live in, whoever owns your security owns you and everything that you own and have.
Mm-hmm.
Praetorians figured this out, and there's others, the Egyptian, you can see the studies and all these, right? But your house, if you are not exceedingly careful in how you do things, and which this is actually why feudalism was developed. Feudalism was developed as a means by which to prevent a Praetorian from emerging again, because it's the parasitism and the rapaciousness and the just sheer bloody mindedness of the Praetorians, which is why Rome is no longer with us. Right? So, who
We're
are the
seeing it now.
CIA? Who are the MI6? Who are the FBI? Who is MI5? Who is all? These are the Praetorian. This
Mhm.
is the martial side, the house guard side of the intelligence side of the Praetorians. They've been run by out of Venice for 1,000 years, and then Amsterdam for the last 300 and some odd years, right? 400 years. And we like to think the Five Eyes, et cetera. No, who created that? They did. Where's Walsingham? The last time the English-speaking peoples had their own intelligence and security was Walsingham with Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth I. They've been steadily supplanted since by this continental, right? These continental Praetorians.
Mhm.
And now they're riddled throughout everything. And um, give me a second. What's all this predictive programming shit that, Sarah Smith or whatever the hell her name is, batshit crazy woman, and all these others are doing when they're talking about terrorist attacks and all this other stuff in the United States or cartels, etc. What are they doing? They're threatening the elites with their own security,
Mhm.
right? Look at history. How many people have, how many leaders have been assassinated by their own security? Machiavelli talked about this, right? You can't trust mercenaries. And that's what these
Indeed.
are, mercenaries.
Indeed.
So back to the Rothschilds. Rothschilds are just one banking family amongst many in Germany at the time when they came up out of the ghettos of Frankfurt. They were only one of like 12 banking families. And there was only like two of the banking families that were Jewish. And the others were way bigger and way more influential.
Mhm.
But we do like to put everything on the Jews.
What about the Roosevelts? Are the Roosevelts Dutch?
The Roosevelts are Dutch. The
The Teddy Roosevelt,
Vanderbilts,
the Vanderbilts are Dutch. Ah, okay. There
right?
we go. Okay.
And there's others of the time. And forgive me again, I pay more attention to factions,
Right,
but
right, right, right.
but a good amount of the wealthiest families in American history, pre-technology, pre-20th century, had Dutch ancestry.
What about DuPont?
DuPont's originally, if I remember, are French.
I think they're French. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
I was actually
French.
just ironically just the other day I was reading up on like old money in the US and like the Gilded Age on Long Island,
Yeah.
and they're saying there's old money, then there's like old money, and I didn't recognize the only one I recognized of the old was DuPont. The newer, which
Well,
is hilarious to say new,
so
were
the
Carnegie,
DuPonts are
Rockefeller.
French, but who bankrolled them?
Sure. Who? Dutch? I don't know. Probably. If
City of
that's
London and Amsterdam.
okay.
So, yeah, so it's not just the families, ethnicity. It's who bankrolled and financed and backed them, and who backed the Bush family.
E.H. Harriman brothers.
Yeah, the Harriman brothers. But who's
Yeah.
behind them, right? The point is that the way in which the Praetorians learned something in 312 when they came out in the open, had been steadily coming out in the open, and had been assassinating emperors from, the 100s on to, et cetera. It set in motion a reaction amongst the elites. And it took over a century. That's why the empire was literally split in two, because part of the elite said, well, hey, the empire is getting big enough, it's complex enough. We better put an HQ over here. We better, in the eastern part where most of the wealth was, by the way, right? We better do that. And we're going to have our own security and our own guards here because you guys are all really good at all this, but we need some local people, et cetera, because they understand. They got and it took about a century to finally get all that clear to where there wasn't a Praetorian threat internal to the Eastern Empire. And then they built up. And in 312, Constantine went and crushed them at the Battle of Milvian Bridge. Just destroyed their armies, the Praetorian armies and the Praetorian Guard, and killed their emperor and said, if you ever come back together again, I'll kill you. And he did. He hunted them for the rest of his life. That's why they went and hid in the marshes of Venice, the survivors.
So those are the survivors. So the Bank of Venice are the survivors from Constantinople's attack. These are the guys who made it out alive. They go to Venice. They set up
reconstitute. Yep. They build up Venice.
Yep. Gets all ready to go out of Turkey. They split and head to Amsterdam.
Yep. And then from there, very quickly, within a century, so they realized the continent's too hot because they had been fostering all of this anti-princely stuff. They've been fostering all this liberal democracy stuff and feeding all this conflicts because they needed to destroy the hereditary princes because they wanted their land and estates and they wanted the labor and they wanted the collateral and they wanted all of that. And so they had to get somewhere safe but close by, and the British Isles are the perfect place. There's actually nowhere else you could do it. And then from there, they came to New York, to New Amsterdam. They already set up infrastructure, et cetera. And what did that become? Well, that's Wall Street and the old banking families and the banking houses and the stock exchanges. And so they were setting us up, later, because they'll build you up first, and then
Brown Brothers Harriman.
Brothers Harriman, right?
There you go. The Bank in New York.
In
Alexander
the
Hamilton.
1940s, though, they start to realize that there are some Americans and some British lords who are starting to see through the ruse and are starting to, because we've been assassinating them. We've been stealing, where's the British aristocracy? It's gutted. It's hardly anybody left. And most of them are barely above poverty level, right? In terms of real wealth and assets. Yes, they've got beautiful homes and properties, but if you look at them, most of them are run down to shit and are not worth anything. And they're barely financially surviving, et cetera. Many of them surrendered their titles. The ones that survived World War I, the few. So where's all that wealth that went of the British Empire? It didn't stay in Britain. Where's all the wealth of the United States? It hasn't stayed in the United States, right? Yeah. So in the 1940s, some of the older families and nobility was starting to realize, no, we're going to have to fight these guys, right? And so so what did they start to do? They started to build out the spider's web. You familiar with that term? The spider's web, which is all this offshore banking structures.
Okay.
Caymans, Bahamas, Guernsey, Guernsey, Gibraltar, Labuan, used to be Hong Kong. Okay. And they started to move wealth and assets and operations through there. By the 1960s, some of the nobility and the broader nobility, not just titled nobility, but the princely houses and the princely families started to fight back, and so they killed the president in broad daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And 7 years later, they killed his brother.
All right, so taking us into the current day, modern age,
they just tried to kill Trump on live TV.
Well,
Same
we got
people.
Mark Rudy, right? Yeah. You got Mark Rudy over there, and you got this Geert Wilders act of defiance, 48 hours, 72 hours ago. Can you walk us through that a little bit? I mean, this Geert Wilders character, who is he? Does he matter? Is he, what about this Mark Rudy guy? He doesn't seem to be very well liked on the X platform. Everybody yells at him. What's going on there now? It seems like
they turned on their own people.
Tell us more.
It worked in the Netherlands until they turned on their own. So
you're talking about the farmers when they decide they're going to Right.
Yeah.
So
And the
tell everybody
farmers
what
are
that.
just the surface of that. There was also all the green energy and all of the,
Right.
and so give me a second. The problem, you have to have a balance of power between king, court, government, princes, oligarchs, and the people. You have to. And if you remove any one of those, the whole thing at some point is going to collapse because one of the other ones is going to come after, it's going to think they're the power. Well, while they've had a notional nobility in the Netherlands, they have no real power. They're museum pieces, right?
Mhm.
Showpieces, just like the British royals and much of the nobility there. They're just there to provide no legitimacy, never given enough power and constantly kept in conflict with the people so that they don't come together and throw these bastards out, right? The Praetorians out. The problem is that in order to make all of this work in the United Kingdom, in France, all these places where they've embedded themselves as the Praetorian system, the financialist system, as we should probably call it today, and the financialist kill chain system. The problem is that they've been steadily reducing the capacity of oligarchs and princes, steadily increasing the conflict between the princes and the people, and increase in the course of doing that, steadily building up the parliamentarians, the governments, right, the bureaucracies, etc. Well, most bureaucrats are retards.
Yeah.
They're fucking retards.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them with fancy degrees and some of them worked at big corporations, but most of the guys I know that went to Harvard or Stanford or, worked at Goldman Sachs or wherever they're in government, they're there because they failed at Goldman Sachs or they failed at PG, Procter and Gamble, or, you know what I mean? They just, so where they go? They go to government. The problem is that this steadily reducing the power of the oligarchs, the princes, and the steady, impoverishing of the people and pitting those against each other while building up this, this extraction system that is bureaucracy, that is government writ large. And then, stealing all of the assets through financialism, et cetera, it created an imbalance to where the retards in government think they're the power. They don't realize that they're a sham, they're a puppet, they're an artificial construct. They don't know that. They're fucking retarded.
So we saw the same thing in Canada, effectively,
Exactly.
and we don't see what's his face. Trudeau's out of the picture.
Yes.
Same scenario, right? So
Yes.
so these guys got out of control.
Yes.
Said, okay, all we need you to do is give up 60% of your cattle and turn over half your land to the government. And the scene in Netherlands with the farmers
Yes.
drove their tractors into
Yes.
town and were spraying manure all over the place.
This
And
happened in France too, by the way. France,
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was fantastic.
Yeah. I'm adopted as a Burlingame, and the Burlingame family's been in upstate New York since the 1650s, I think. First came 1620s or 30s into Rhode Island and then up into New York. Anyway, my great grandfather on my father's side in upstate New York, adopted father, was very angry at the little town, the small little government in the town that he was in. This is in the 1920s, I think, 19 teens, 1920s. So he tied the manure spreader behind his car and sped through downtown, and it blew manure all the way up the sides of the building into the eaves. So when I saw the Dutch and the French doing it, I was like, yeah,
Fucking biowarfare.
right.
He was disco before disco was cool.
Right.
You gotta love it. That's awesome.
So, but that's where it is. Where it is that the Praetorians, the golem, right? Their golem has gotten out of control. Their golem thinks it's a real boy.
All right, so you can only push the people so far. Now, what's interesting to me
and
is
the princes, right. You can only, yeah.
Okay, all right.
When you start going after the princes, then they
that's MBS. That's the MBS story.
Yes, correct.
And the more you're talking about this, the more I've got to be thinking, Tommy, that MBS has been studying this stuff
Yes.
Remember, he went to school like at
Yes.
Sorbonne. This guy is so well educated
Well, and who helped
about
build
this.
up with his family Dutch Shell?
Royal Dutch Shell, yeah.
Royal Dutch Shell help with the oil production and all that. So they've been dealing not just
With
with
another
Exxon,
one.
but Royal Dutch Shell for over a century.
I was
And
what
they've had people show up at their homes with a statement, you're going to do this or this. You're going to do this or
He
we're going to
knows.
do this.
Yeah, he knows exactly how this game is played. He's studied.
Yes.
He
Like
knows
Trump
what's at stake.
in New York. And Trump said that one time. Somebody asked him, how do you know all these things? He says, because I used it.
Yeah,
I benefited from it.
right.
My father did before me.
yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
MBS clearly has studied this. He sees the Arab Spring threat. It's like
Yes, for what it is.
history keeps repeating itself.
Yeah.
We're not even going to. We're not even going to consider it. We're not even going to mention it. And that's what cost Jamal Khashoggi his life. I'm convinced of it. He was advocating for Arab Spring and
Totally.
Saudi
Okay.
Arabia.
Okay. So let's do that. So Mackinder, right? The Mackinder strategy
No.
about ringing Russia with conflict because you didn't want a Eurasian power to emerge.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Makes sense.
That's Mackinder.
Okay.
Okay. And we've been doing that, ringing the edge of Russia and the borderlands with strike. Okay. We've done the same thing. Again, Praetorian concepts and ideas through the British to Saudi Arabia. What are the conflicts in Yemen and Qatar and Oman and
Iran.
right? In Iran and Iraq.
Israel,
what is that?
Iran, Yemen. Yeah.
What are we doing? We are ringing the heart of Islam, Mecca,
Somalia,
and Medina,
right?
Somalia, Ethiopia.
The Arab Gulf.
Correct. We're using the Mackinder strategy again to ring Saudi Arabia with conflict.
Is that in opposition or in
control?
Right.
Well,
it's control.
Well, I mean, as opposed to the Arab Spring, or is this along the same vein of thought?
Well, it's how the Arab
The
Spring
real
is
Arab
just a
Spring, not
mechanism.
the horseshit one, the one that
Arab
the
Spring's
CIA
a mechanism.
all this country.
Yeah,
is that mechanism? Is this part of the same playbook? It's
yes.
Because at face value, they seem opposites. You're like Arab Spring followed by no, let's unite it all versus like let's fuck it all up. But this is actually it's part of the same playbook. It's not.
You got it. Yeah, it's all the same.
What was Saudi Arabia? Yeah, what would Saudi Arabia need us for? If everything was peaches and cream and
absolutely
cherry on top.
Nothing.
Let's put it slightly different. Let's put it slightly different way.
Yeah.
What would happen if, with all the oil wealth that the Arab world has accumulated, they had a second golden age?
Yeah.
In a time where the West is being so raped by our own financialists that we're collapsing.
They're trying. I mean, they're trying to buy, right?
Buy Jeddah,
right?
Exactly.
They're trying.
In Riyadh.
Yeah, no, they're trying to bring
for sure.
the future.
For sure.
So what do? You tie them up in nonstop conflict. You distract half of their energies and attention to dealing with internal and external and nearby strife. You make them spend vast fortunes of their income.
This is fascinating because so now with this in mind, you have to kind of tip your hat to the UAE because they didn't engage.
Yes.
Like Qatar. They didn't engage. They just no. We got hotels to build, dude. We got hotels to build. We got beaches. We're busy
slightly
here.
Different it's slightly different with UAE. So UAE, if you look at it and how it's being set up and built up, could be the next Amsterdam.
Okay.
Right? Because when it's not, you've got China there, so you're not there. Okay. So China has said no to this.
Okay.
We were using the Praetorians and embedded this in Praetorian financialist system in there, and China said no. They elevated Xi specifically to fight that. Same with Russia. Russia elevated Putin and maintained Putin for exactly to stop, prevent. Right? You're not doing this to us, Praetorians, Venetians, Dutch, English, Americans. You're not doing this, right?
Yeah.
When you're on that Praetorian side, you have history behind you, and you know that you've had to skedaddle, shall we say, and move your HQ more than once. And so you're always going to have a foothold in even in somebody you're trying to take down's territory, you're going to have a neutral, secure location so that if it turns out that Western Europe goes to hell and
You gotta
and
post
we
it.
turn on them, they're going to go hide in the Islamic world. They're going to go hide
Makes
in the
sense.
Muslim world because then they're going to get them to protect them. They have the manpower. They're the only ones that have the young men that could go fight anymore. The English are dead. There's no fighting men in England anymore. They
Right.
expended the Americans in the GWAT. We're not available to them to fight anymore.
Right.
What is the only population on earth that has the young men that would go to an all-out war? Jihad. And you've already embedded them all across the very lands that you're about to, it's a virulent pathogen that knows that the host is about to die, and it's already been setting up the invitation of the new host, which it will then use to go and fight the youth and the youthful energy and all of that to go fight the old host to kill it off.
Interesting. Interesting. So you think that she is aware of and is a survivor and will battle this? Will keep
Because
this
the Chinese have gone through this twice now.
okay.
The 1900 or late 1800s, early 1900s, and the Opium Wars. And oh, by the way, fentanyl isn't out of freaking China; it's out of Holland, through Canada, through Mexico. Okay,
Uh-huh.
and this is coming out now. Actually, look at the cocaine trade. Look at the meth trade. Look at the MDMA trade. Look at the drug trade in Europe. Rotterdam is the center of all of it, right? Rotterdam.
Yes.
Okay. Well, what was the shipping ports for the opium in the Opium Wars? China.
Rotterdam.
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 Okay. Blaming the
do a whole
British.
show on Rotterdam.
Which is itself a separate,
right.
carved out private protectorate.
That's like
It's self-regulating.
show in and of itself is the history of Rotterdam and how
Yes.
pivotal it has been
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
global shipping story.
Yeah. So UAE
Yeah.
is not that they didn't. No. UAE is being kind of protected because it's a potential fallback if they have to go there.
Got it. Very
Right.
interesting.
And then they'll use what is it? 70% of the population of the Islamic world is under the age of 30, and something like 60% of them are male. That's an army. That's a vast army and legions. And they've been flooding Europe and the United States with these as a threat. They don't care about these people. These people are brown. I hate to say it that way, but it's just exactly how they think, right? And they're like, well, they don't care about these people. They're just fodder. They're just somebody to either be shoved into death labor camps if things go that way, or to be used as body bags to try and fight the white people. And it also turns out you're going to wind up fighting some black people and some Hispanic people too, because we actually all like each other. We all get along, and we all consider ourselves American English, and we'll fucking fight you assholes. So their thinking's not so clear, but
What you saw.
that's how they work. That's how they think.
It makes sense what you're saying about UAE. I mean, other than the fact that it's like a country-sized Vegas, it's in the Burj Khalifa, all the skyscrapers, Palm Jumeirah, all the sand, crazy shit. But what you've talked about before, right? Like the modern slave labor, the modern indentured. That's what these again. Yeah, it's don't give a fuck about these people. Like wake up. I mean, they don't. Since when do these people give a shit?
They want them dead, but they want them to die in support of their efforts.
Well, they want them to die fucking turning the wheel so you can get some kilowatts out of them.
They just don't care. They just don't care. I mean, it's grist for the mill. It's grist for the mill. Have you seen the Louvre, Abu Dhabi? The Louvre Abu Dhabi is spectacular. It's like there's like a documentary on YouTube about how they built it and all this.
Yeah.
It is magnificent.
That's what they're doing. They're setting up a mini Europe,
right,
in Dubai and Abu Dhabi in case they have to go there, and then they can go fall in on their own home. It's going to be a little hotter, and it's going to. But that's what they're doing.
No, it makes.
They tried to do it. Paul, terribly sorry, Tommy. Yeah. They tried to do it with China. Look at all the exact replica cities, European cities that are in China now.
Macau,
all of which have failed.
Macau is Vegas in China, right.
Because they were doing the same. They were trying to set up China. That's where they were going. That started in the 1970s. That's what Nixon's visit was about.
So is sort of the residual evidence of that, of what we saw in China. So the Praetorian attempt to try and take control of China.
Yes.
Is that what we're seeing as far as these quote unquote ghost cities? In other words, did they come in and try and finance construction, real estate construction, in order to make the government beholden to them, the bankers, and
the people?
Right. So the people get pissed off.
Yeah.
So is that what we're seeing there? So when we see these ghost cities, is that sort of the legacy of the Praetorian attempt
Yes, but not exactly that way. Just like we use aid to foreign countries to capitalize former colonial banks, because when that aid goes to that country, it has to go to a trusted bank. We need to send our funds, hundreds of millions or this number of billions. It needs to go into a trusted bank. Turns out 99.9% of the time, those banks are old colonial banks, which means that capital ledger might be reflected in that country, but it's used to hypothecate back in some, in the headquarters of that colonial bank. Deutsche Bank, HSBC, yada, yada, right?
Right.
Banco Santander.
Royal Bank of Scotland.
Royal Bank of Scotland. What's the French one?
Société Générale.
Générale, Paribas, right?
Union Bank of Switzerland.
There you go. Yep. Okay. It's the same thing they were doing in China, but not through the banks, but through these big real estate corporations. And what they did is those companies, and there's a great documentary called The China Hustle. Great documentary. What they were doing is they weren't doing it in that aid form of way. They did that back in the 70s and 80s. But when they made it industrial, what they did is through the markets. So they'll take a Chinese company, dramatically. This is why I left investment banking. It's why I left China, because this was all going on. I didn't want any part of it. This is why I left the whole, and that's why I had to go in the military and go to war to just feel better about myself and the industry I'd spent.
That's a great quote from you I've used before. I said I had a buddy in finance who became a Green Beret so he could kill people to get the bad taste of finance out of his mouth.
It's when you realize who these people are and how, but the point being, to your question, is what they did is they would build up a company like a major real estate company, Evergreen or Evergrande or whatever, and these other companies, and then they would float them on foreign stock markets and dump those into people's 401ks and retirement funds at grossly overvalued, prices. It was all a sham. It was all a scam, because what shareholders are going to go to China, to some remote area, and go look at it?
And then about Dubai, it's not that profound of a point, but it's because specifically you, EM, have brought up like modern slavery before. Dubai is the thing about the Burj Khalifa in comparison to other like world's tallest towers over the years. Is this is like 70% of the labor force was legitimately in indentured servitude.
Well, straight up slaves. I might or might not know people in the Levant, in that part of the world, that actually have slaves.
Well, and that's why there's a whole thing.
They don't call them that.
Yeah. Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, the architect firm that I was obsessed with skyscrapers for a while. They're the ones that designed the Burj Khalifa. All these companies that go there, they all kind of get like pushback, because it's like, are you building over there in that like slave labor country? And they kind of go, yeah, but it's almost like a weird paperclip where like they get to go do all the shit they've always wanted, build a mile-high tower out of gold or some shit. But that's,
Burj Khalifa is beautiful.
It is. It is.
Look at all the things in Europe that are beautiful that were built with slave labor. Look at ancient Egypt. Look at it. Right?
Yeah, I got to see somewhat firsthand. I mean, when you go to Thailand, I lived in Thailand for 6 years. The guys who do construction there are from Burma.
And the
so
Philippines.
Yeah. But mostly it's Burmese. So it's mostly, what you see are Burmese work camps.
Yeah.
And so they literally construct their own work camp.
Yeah.
They live in these little huts.
Yep.
They cook together and bathe together at the end of the day. And they're paid, I think the women are paid $10 a day and the guys are paid $15 a day.
Yeah.
And they live in a work camp together. They've got no papers.
Same with the Bengalis. Right?
Yeah,
the Bengalis, right? They're the other one. The Rohingya, yeah. So I was the first group guy.
The Tamils in India.
Yeah.
The Tamils are doing stuff in India. So you see this in different parts of the world, and some people call it slavery, some people call it indentured servitude, and some people say, "But I pay them $15 a day." So and that's the going rate.
So
Well,
let's,
by the way, Tommy,
yeah,
if you're building a house in Thailand and you offer your Burmese construction crew $50 a
more.
day,
Yeah. They'll throw you out.
the other Thai
Yeah.
construction company is going to kill you
Yeah.
because now the word just got out that you're paying everybody $50 a day.
Yeah.
They'll
Oh,
kill
they'll do
you.
worse.
You'll be.
They'll get your
Yeah.
daughter on drugs and
Yeah,
prostitute her out. I
dude,
mean, they'll.
you can't buck the system like that and say, well, it's not appropriate to pay people $10 a day.
Yeah.
You can't come in there with this.
How did we? I don't doubt that. How did we break out of that? He just is kind of an aside,
Well,
not an aside. How did we break out of that? Like Henry Ford, fucking like leaving the Gilded Age, 40-hour work weeks. Had other guys tried it and got killed, and after enough times, they eventually kind
you know
of
what?
through.
One of the things Henry Ford did is he didn't trust the Pinkertons, and he had his own security for him and his own family. That's one thing. By the way, I know one of the Pinkerton direct descendants. He's a good friend of mine, Warren.
Yeah.
Let's touch on one thing, Tommy. I want to respond directly to what you're saying, but let's do a couple pieces. Okay. What we have to understand is that this whole thing about Rome and the Roman Empire and going back to Rome and we're the modern Rome, who's selling that idea? Who's selling that concept? It's the Praetorians. And the reason they want us to go back to the Roman world is why? Because they were the fucking power.
Yeah.
They were the power. That was structures and systems and organization and accountability and all of this. They know how to run that as a fucking mob, right? Violent, own your house guards, slaughter you in your fucking sleep, kill your daughter, kill your son, right? Mm-hmm. Ray Dalio's eldest son died in a car accident after his middle son had been hit and run in a car accident and almost killed him. And David Rockefeller died, or David Rothschild died suddenly of a heart attack in his early 50s for no goddamn reason. A few
like
years,
last year,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
A couple years ago.
So, and
Bobby Kennedy's
Bill
wife
Gates,
hung herself, and he's got 9 other kids.
Right. And Bill Gates' daughter might have been at an equestrian event in Europe where the security was about 17 minutes late and all kinds of things could happen there. Maybe. Right. Maybe that happened. So this is why they want Rome. This is why this whole concept of Rome. Well, the feudal system, and to your question, Tommy, okay, the feudal system developed in direct refutation of Rome. Because if you centralize power and you put it in these structures, it inevitably is total and absolute slavery. It's just it's a viral pathogen load that just extracts until the host is dead. And it does
We're seeing it play out again now. I mean, Cash Patel comes in.
Yes.
We got to get rid of the FBI, get rid of everybody's in Washington. They're
and then he and Bongino go on TV and they look like somebody standing on the other side of the camera with a gun pointed at their freaking head.
No doubt.
Or it's got their kid there with a knife in its throat. I mean, that's more what they look like.
You've seen the meme where it's the lizard people and they're holding guns to their heads and they're like, Epstein fucking killed himself. But I mean, but like, yeah.
Well, the lizard people are Praetorians. They are Venetians, become Dutch, become, City of London English.
This is perhaps the best real-time example.
Yeah, we're living it.
Patel and Bongino.
Yes.
Just
flip.
I mean, it's never been more obvious.
Well, what about when the president's attorney? Okay.
Yep.
They kick his door in at 6:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
This is the president's personal attorney, and they sue him for $150 million. What's the guy supposed to do?
Or
you'd think he's untouchable, right? So this is, I think, what you're getting at, EM, is that the people that thought they were untouchable
are owned
and are not untouchable. When Trump takes a bullet to the ear, the mess, all of a sudden, even Democrats on the Hill were saying, whoa, this is unacceptable, because they started to fear for their own lives.
Some of them were calling for escalation.
Yes.
Because
those are the retards.
There's the retards. And the problem is that the dog thinks it's the master. This is, Dr. Ian McGilchrist, right? The master and the emissary, the Nietzschean story, where the master has built this flock, this very successful, very thriving flock. He's a bishop or a cardinal, and the burdens upon his day are such that he can't maintain the contact with his flock. So he hires an emissary to travel around and give him information and carry messages and, help him do this. So at some point, the emissary says, well, I'm the one doing all the work. We don't need the master. And he mounts a coup and throws the master out. And what happens within a few years? It all collapses. Well, that's what's happened. The emissary, parliament, government thinks it's the master, and it's gone after it's gone after the masters and the people. It's been going after the people. The princes didn't, the masters didn't really care about that so much. Just sometimes, right? As long as it didn't get out of hand. But then they started to go after the masters.
The people stand up in France. The people stand up in Netherlands. The people bring the tractors into town. They spray the manure all over. I'm concerned.
Truckers in Canada.
Yes, but I'm concerned in America. I think people were taking too much Wellbutrin, Paxil, Prozac, Zoloft, that everything's just kind of, Martha, what are we supposed to do about it? We're not going to really, let's not rock the boat.
This is what I write about a lot is what do we do? One of the first things we have to do is recognize who we're really up against. The second thing we have to do is we have to undo their psyop that goes back over 1,000 years. And the primacy of this psyop goes back to ending feudalism. Because feudalism, during the 1,000 years or 800 or so years of feudalism, Praetorians were never able to rise. They might be able to rise within a single court for a time, but because there was a balance of power amongst the princes themselves, where other princes could step in who had direct relationships with their own people, and their own people were in this feedback reciprocal relationship where the prince knew he and his family could get torn out of the palace at midnight with pitchforks and torches, right? So feudalism developed specifically, and oh, by the way, where did it start? Northern Italy, then the Franks, et cetera. It rolled out from there, right? When Charlemagne came in 300 years after the fall of Western Rome, there were noble, feudalism was already in Italy.
It's interesting, though. It's also something that sort of simultaneously developed in Asia.
Correct.
So if you study the Khmer, so you had princes throughout Cambodia, Thailand, Burma, and each one of these had their own feudal area that they managed. They collected the taxes. They provided the security.
They reinvested.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you had a number of princes throughout Southeast Asia. So this was the Khmer people. And what you're describing, it's like identical. It's like, and they were building temples in Siem Reap, Cambodia, and all that kind of stuff, 1,000 years ago, just like we see in other parts of the world. Very interesting parallels.
So this is a thing that we have to recognize, is that decentralization is the only way to prevent this Praetorian, Venetian, Dutch, City of London, Wall Street, total and absolute in slavery. It's the only way.
I just had an epiphany. So that's what Thomas Jefferson, that's what he's thinking, is we have to give the states the rights. We have to decentralize this, or the federal entity is going to go berserk. And if we don't push,
we will have a Praetorian. We will have a Praetorian
and further decentralized by giving everyone a GAT. Really make it that hard to
which in a feudal system you had to have your own arms, because you might be called up by the Lord to go fight some other tyrannical somebody who's trying to take over, or you might have to, even like what led to the Magna Carta, go fight the king and his armies and his loyals, and and you can't do that if you're not armed.
Federalist paper number, what is it, 84, talks about, guys, they sent the Navy, the British Navy, here to kill us.
Yes.
Because we wouldn't pay our taxes.
It wasn't about taxes, actually. That's a red herring that's been thrown out there. They sent the British Navy because the colonials stopped adhering to the judgments of the colonial courts and the crown magistrate courts. who are steadily consistent. And this is a parallel to exactly today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the courts were ruling against the colonials, and by the by, not just against the colonials, because we have to remember there were lords in the United Kingdom who owned the land, and indirectly they were ruling against the lords.
Oh boy, this is Tommy. This is exactly what's going on right now.
It's
with
exactly
all these guys. Yeah.
Is that why I think it was Trump's first day in office, 2017? He nixed U.S. involvement, or I don't know what, involvement of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was supposed to be, it was like the OG hollow out everything and basically make the world NAFTA, make it so, and I'm probably butchering it, but that countries could
it's give it to a
everything.
superstructure, give power and authority to a superstructure, an unaccountable, non-geographic,
But it kind of looks like global feudalism is my point. So
no. That's feudalism, though. You got to understand, feudalist system's got barons and counts and viscounts and marquises and dukes and
this is just outright slavery.
And no, that's feudalism was not slavery.
No, I'm saying, is that what the TPP was?
Yes. By so when you have these various levels of nobility and they're all working together and in competition with one another in this various decentralized way, and they're all working for their own people and purposes, and they're all in these you can't get a total superpower that can enslave everybody, because you got to get a whole number of them to come around and get behind you and all of that. It just doesn't work. And by the by, it's the same way the immune system works in the body.
Well, and they set up feudalism because feudalism prevents a Praetorian from rising.
Correct. Yes.
So does that
every county?
It prevents slavery.
So
think about every county has got their own governor. Every mayor has got their own, real power, like it was supposed to be. This is how the country was set up.
Yeah.
If it's not in the Constitution, it's right. It's the states.
It's the states, and it's the county. It's not even the states. It's not even the states. It's the counties. The way in which the
National Guard.
That's right.
States are supposed to have their own militia, right?
That's right. The sheriffs are at what level? County.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that, I think we talked about, does that tie into like tariffs again, kind of moving away from the vast global ocean of a slave class and more of a put hard lines around stuff?
It does help, but what it really does is it prevents foreign monies. This is also with SOFR, right? This is why the importance of SOFR. And Tom, our mutual friend, talks this way better than I do. But the way in which the Praetorians work is they use cheap money that they've stolen from other people. In this case, mostly it's illicit, right? You're getting about $1.6 trillion a year in illicit cash. That goes into the banks at about 4.5% charge for the laundering. And so the banks are winding up with 1.6 trillion a year in cash that has nothing to do with fundamental economies or fundamental business. It's just all straight illicit. And then they lend that out 10 to 20 to 1. Since the 19 teens, since Prohibition, the Praetorians have basically completely and utterly replaced Western economies with illicit funding. And all you need is enough of a trickle down amongst the people. You need them in misery or some level of misery or discomfort, so they turn to vice to, feel okay about life. And you make all this money off vice. That goes into the banks. That's the base of your economy now.
And if there's no vice, you give them Prozac or Wellbutrin.
Correct.
And so if they're miserable, they don't even know they're miserable.
Correct.
Miserable is actually okay.
Correct. And what does that do? It removes your local nobility from the ability to have economic power and economic control of their local economies and their local markets, which is the only counter to these people. Local sufficiency, right?
What I saw in Canada, what I saw in Netherlands, what I saw in France, when these guys, so we saw the yellow vests in France back in 2020. We saw in the farmers in France and Netherlands bring the tractors into town, spray manure all over the place. Yeah. We saw the truckers in Canada.
Yeah.
What did we see in the United States? I don't remember anything except for George Floyd and a bunch of bricks on the corner. And how did
No,
the
no, no,
bricks
no.
go?
We're doing an awesome job at pushing back
At
by
where?
doing fentanyl in the streets.
Yeah, I mean, come, dude. Is
So what is that? What
anybody?
is that? That's Opium War II, only now it's not China, it's the United States on the receiving end. It's Opium War II, and it's being driven by the same people, the
Is
Dutch.
anybody noticing? Like, are you guys noticing this? That every other country seems to be up in arms. Even in Chile, they were, about a food
Mhm.
shortage because of the chickens. And America, it wants to know, is Kanye back with Bianca? I
Yeah.
mean, nobody seems to be up in arms in America except that George Floyd 6 weeks
And that
period of
wasn't even
burning everything.
that was all
That
artificial
was
funded
manufactured.
anyways.
That
This is
was
all
manufactured.
manufactured. Yeah, no, we can't be bothered.
But
We
devil's
can't be
advocate,
bothered to get involved.
you could also, and it's not a great argument, but just as a thought experiment, what you just said, John, it could also just be the coverage of it.
What do you
Like,
mean? People aren't aware?
well, no, 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 no. I mean, no, you might not see coverage of people either up in arms online or in real life. Like they don't, like there's so
I'm
many times
gonna
I do shows. I'm like, how come no one else is talking
it's
about
not
this?
happening. I'm
Okay.
gonna put it in a different context, Tommy, and you and I have talked this a couple times, okay? The reason those people are rising up is because they have a distinct civilization and culture. We don't anymore. That's been steadily ripped from us. This is my whole conversation about we are English. We are English civilization. We're not Englishmen. There's no such thing as a ethnic English person. We are a civilization, and our civilization is over 1,000 years old. And we've been through a lot, and we've done extraordinary things, and we screwed up a lot of things, but we built a lot of things, created a lot of things, and we did most of it while we were occupied and still got it done, still did these things. We alone ended slavery, open slavery. Unfortunately, we helped embed this, invisible slavery. We alone raised half the world's population in 20 years alone out of abject poverty and starvation until that got used against us to do color revolutions and coups and all this other stuff, right? We've got a problem. One of the problems is we got two problems. Fundamentally, we fail to recognize ourselves as a civilization, and no, America is not a civilization. It's a country and it's a culture that comes from a civilization, a
Mm-hmm.
much older civilization. Every bit of our culture, every bit of our very language we use comes from a civilizational people that we've been denied the recognition of intentionally over the last 300 plus years, that the heart of that has been occupied by foreigners, right? So that's one problem. Those people who rise up because they know themselves as a distinct people and culture worth fighting for. We've been denied that on purpose in all of our entertainment, everything. And long before there even was the United States, this was happening, right? That's the whole concept of British. There is no such thing as a British. It was made up by people on the continent to prevent us from recognizing what Alfred the Great, Edward, and Athelstan instantiated in the 800s and the 900s, and really, which goes back further to Egbert, Alfred the Great's grandfather, because he's really the one that started it, right, in the late 700s. So, or early 800s, I don't remember exactly. But the point is that the reason we're not rising is because we don't recognize ourselves as a people, a distinct people from a distinct civilization that is worth fighting for.
Scots have held firm, right? Scotland has said, we're not really British, we're Scottish.
Well,
The
that's the
Irish, the
divides. That
Irish have
goes back to
said,
that's the
right, we're
problem.
Irish, right?
Okay. So very good. So this is the problem because this is the Dutch taking over the crown, taking over parliament, thereby education and
Trying
everything
to
else,
merge them all together.
and keeping the English, the Irish, the Scotch, the Welsh, the Cornish, all of us fighting, and then the Americans, and then the different kinds of Americans that come from those places, all fighting each other. Right?
Seems to work.
It works. It
It seems
works.
to
Now,
work.
here's
Yeah.
the thing, and this is why it works because we don't recognize ourselves as collectively a single people, which we are. We are. Um, We're a dysfunctional family, but which one isn't? Right? We've got to recognize ourselves as a distinct people. The English, the Scots, the Welsh, the Irish, the Cornish, the English, the Sax, the East Anglians, etc. We're all one people. We've come up together over 1,000 years, and really all the way back to 44 AD when the Romans came across in the first place. Right? That's the first time we all started to come together. So we got a history that goes back several thousand years. It's very unique to us. We built a very unique civilization. The whole reason there's the United States of America today and a constitution is because of the English, because of the Constitution, because of the the constitutional monarchy, and the English Bill of
Church of
Rights
England,
and the
yeah.
Magna Carta and the frickin' Dooms of Alfred. We are a people and we're worth fighting for. We need to come together and get over our petty squabbles that they keep feeding. That's the first part. The second part is that as the English civilization, we are from our inception a multicultural people. Again, English, Scottish, there was an English, Britannies, Picts, Gales, Celts, Scots, Anglos, Saxons, Anglians, Danes, right? We've been a multi-ethnic people, multilinguistic, multicultural people from our very inception. The problem is that it makes us susceptible to letting people in that we shouldn't have let in. And because later we let in Italians and we let in Germans and we let in French and, well, not so much the French, right? But we let in Germans, we let in Italians, we let in Poles, and they assimilated. They assimilated very well. And not just in the United States, but they were assimilated in what would become the United Kingdom hundreds of years ago fairly well. Why? Because while they brought their culture from where they came from, they became part of our civilization. They adopted the framework and the principles of English civilization. That's not true over the last 60 to 80 years. So first, we need to recognize what English civilization is and that it is ours and it is unique and it's extraordinary and we need to all fight for it. And the second thing is that we have an inherent weakness in it. And that inherent weakness is that we are by nature in our civilization from its very inception multicultural, but that doesn't mean every culture. It doesn't mean that every culture can acclimatize and become English. They can't. And we can't have them here. They got to go.
It's interesting because, you look back 100 years, 120 years, right? Back to the early 1900s, late 1800s. And you had Italians coming over. You had the Irish coming over.
Yeah.
You had English coming over,
Yeah.
Scots coming over. I'm not sure how many Spanish were coming.
None.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a big number. But if you look at the makeup of America, right, I think that the largest nationality that's not Anglo-Saxon is German, right? And then we go to, the Italian, Irish, etc.
Scandinavian.
Yeah.
Big Scandinavian, yeah.
So different people from different parts of Europe came over, were able to acclimatize, assimilate to a certain degree, learn the language, adopt whatever we call, this American lifestyle. And as you've pointed out, in the last maybe 60, 70, 80 years, that started to change. It seems other cultures have started to come here and don't seem to want to assimilate as well as we saw 100 years ago. To what are we attributing this? Why the change? Why is it that 120 years ago, people were kind of happy to come to America, learn the American way, learn to speak English, embrace all this, and in the last maybe 20, 30 years, we've actually seen, it looks almost like an invasion, like they're bringing other cultures here with Sharia law, stuff of that nature.
So if you want to take down a civilizational people, you have to deny them recognition of their civilization. You have to flood their communities and disrupt their communities with people who will never become part of their society and civilization. You have to do it. This is old knowing. Mao talked about this. Trotsky talked about it, right? Like the head of the Soviets were non-Russians. There were Georgians. There was a Jew from Brooklyn, right? the folks that were the head Soviets weren't Russians. The ones that were the head of certain organizations were all foreigners. So if you want to take down it, and the Russians are a civilizational people, if you want to take down a civilizational people, you have to do all kinds of academic and psyop and all the forms of psyops to deny them recognition of themselves as a civilization. And for the English speaking people, that goes back to 1680s. In fact, it goes back to 1620s, 30s, and 40s, where all this started. That's the first piece. Second piece is you got to flood them with people that are never going to be like them, never going to fit in. People are going to feel like second and third rate citizens. So they're pissed off. They got a chip on their shoulder and a grudge. How do you do that? Well, we've been doing color revolutions and wars all over the world to create a refugee crisis. So who is flooding into our country? The cowards in their own country who wouldn't stand and fight for their own fucking people.
Is there a history of this? Have we seen anything like this?
Ancient history. This has happened in Egypt. This has happened in other civilizations and societies before. It's what you do when you want to.
Egypt was infiltrated by another culture.
Look at several of the. And forgive me, I don't remember the exact. But there were several of the dynasties that this is how they ended. This is what was done. This is what was done to the Greeks, and this is what was done, by the Ottomans, right, into the Hellenistic world, etc., in Eastern Europe. This is what you do. And who do you flood them with? You don't flood them with your best. You take care of them, right? They got jobs and wealth and etc. You flood your fucking cowards, your little piece of shits, into these other places to just cause chaos and havoc and disruption and expense. And while you're doing that, you're doing a psyop about how stupid and ignorant and racist and bigoted and et cetera people are, so they don't go back and reconnect to their own history and culture and go, yeah, we're us, you ain't, get the fuck out. And if you won't get out, I'm going to throw you out. And by the way, I'm probably going to use a plane and no parachutes.
Yeah, there's a big difference. I mean, in America, we have Italian Americans and Irish Americans and Black
African Americans.
African Americans. Yeah. But when you go to Japan, there's no Italian Japanese, Irish Japanese, Black Japanese. They don't have that there. It's like you're either Japanese or you're Irish, or you're Japanese or you're Italian, or you're Japanese or you're Black. Or there's no Italian Japanese. There's no Irish Japanese.
No.
So this notion, I think it's unique to the United States. I don't know of any other.
No, it's happening in the United Kingdom. It's happening in Canada. What's happening is in the English-speaking peoples. And the reason, again, is that we are initially at our very founding, unlike any of these other peoples, even the Russians, but at our very beginning, we were multicultural.
But so I look at the multicultural aspect of the United States a little bit differently than England, but that is probably just my ignorance. Is it safe to say that India served a similar role to England as Africa did to the United States? Because we see,
yes.
I mean, there's a lot of Indian people in England, right? And the Indian culture has permeated. You go to London, everybody talks about getting curry. You want to get curry. It's permeated the culture.
So,
what are your thoughts on
that? I've been looking at power structures and systems in the English-speaking world, right? And I've been banging my head up against this. We've got to recognize ourselves and remember that we're a civilization, and this is what it is and where it comes from. And I can be pissed at my dad all I want, but if the family's under attack, I go fucking home and I fight for the family. Right? My dad and I can go back to being pissed at each other later. Right? So, but I look at and I've done some articles, they're on X, right? In Substack, on what I call the ring theory of the English civilization. And the core of that, of course, is the British Isles. That's the core of the English speaking peoples. Then you've got ring number, the first ring, the inner ring, which are they're for all intents and purposes, while they have strong affinities to their own cultures and their own histories, are really still English. And the colonies, the American colonies, right? The American colonies are core members because
Mhm.
that's the 1600s into the 1700s. Once the United States, once they become the United States, now they're inner ring, right? They're the first ring peoples. India, Greater India, which includes Pakistan and Bangladesh today and parts of Southeast Asia, et cetera, is a inner ring, not a core, but they're a first ring peoples. They've co-developed with us over the last several hundred years, almost 300 years, right? And not as a purely subject people, but a whole lot of their people have been in influential positions in the empire for hundreds of years. We've put them all over the empire. The Scots were the ones who managed, and led the empire, quite literally, the Scots. And people forget in the 1700s and 1800s, the best universities in the world were all in Scotland.
Mm, mm.
And the Scots were the Scottish Enlightenment, the 16 and 1800, 1600s and 1700s, was really a major force in the world. And the Scots were the ones that built out as the governors generals, the CEOs of major companies, et cetera. There wasn't enough of us, my mother's people, right, Scottish. And so we identified very capable Indians and put them in those positions at different places, and their families are still there in Africa and back in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. So yeah, they did serve the purpose, and very much like um, the blacks in the United States, right? The black Africans in the United States. I don't mean the later Africans that came directly from Africa and on slavery, but before the whole 1960s Johnson BS and everything that kind of happened before that, going back to in some places late 1700s, mid 1700s, late 1700s, and into the 1800s, there were blacks, former slaves, and free men that were in very influential positions in the United States, including the Senate and Congress and judges and et cetera. And then in the late 1800s, really taking off again under Johnson, we, you know, did the welfare state and we rewrote histories and broke up black families, et cetera. So very much to what you're articulating about the greater Indians in the United Kingdom. Yeah, absolutely. Blacks, they played the same roles as the blacks did here and still do. We still have blacks in very influential positions now, just quite despite what Johnson did to the community. And Johnson's just one man, with that whole Southern Democrat structure with the complicits of the Republicans too, right? Or otherwise that wouldn't happen. There would have been all kinds of fights, right? It's like, how do we enslave them now to the bureaucracy, not the plantation owners, but to the bureaucracy? And, did it very effectively and very ugly. Yeah.
Abortion is a right,
Abortion's a right.
Abortion
You're
is
you're gonna be a great citizen as long as you live in shit, abort your children, but vote the way we want you to.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget to take your Prozac. and make sure you're at work early in the morning and take your Prozac. Yeah. It's wild. I mean, the degree to which history is repeating itself in front of our eyes, and the degree to which I don't think people are aware of it. This is, we've seen this playbook before, and we're watching this play out literally right in front of us.
Yes. It's what ended Rome, and now they're trying to do it again. It's what ended other empires. It's what ended the Habsburgs. It's what ended, right? It's what's gutted the British Empire. It's tried to do it to China. It was doing it in Russia in the 90s. The Russians stepped in and said no. They were doing it in the Chinese, to the Chinese all the way to the 2010s, and then China said no. The question is the United States going to say no? That's what they're trying to do, right? That's what the whole Trump movement is. That's what the whole everything it is. The Americans are trying to say no. The problem is they got Praetorians everywhere, riddled throughout everything, and backing them are these Venetian / Praetorian / Dutch / City of London banking and finance. This is why the war, as Tom says so well, and Axe Craner and others, this is why the war is waging all out in the financial system, because we are trying to bankrupt them so that they can't afford their house guard assassins and psyops and kidnap and extortion and all of that.
Oh, we're
I
trying to
don't.
extract them from the process, right? So, and Jamie
Yes,
well aware of it.
yes, yes,
Jamie Dimon sees blockchain transactions as an existential threat to banking, right? He's not
yes,
needed if we can do all our transactions together, amongst ourselves, and we don't need to log into
yeah,
JP Morgan Chase.
yeah.
He's out of the picture and he's well aware of it. And he just said this past week, America should be investing in bullets and ammo and guns,
He's not wrong.
That's just always
right?
the
He's
default.
That's
not
his
wrong. And
right.
we'll
So,
take a look at the munitions industry developing in a certain place in Canada, which I won't mention, that might be talking about secession.
mm, mm.
So again, I think you and I talked this before. I know Tommy and I have, and Mike Ferris, but I believe in the 1960s, this Constantine-like movement to break the Praetorians began, and we're now in the final fight it out stage. We're not quite there yet, but all the groundwork's being laid, and there is a bloody fight ahead of us. But we've got to, two things. One, we've got to recognize ourselves as as the English civilization, what that means. And Americans, yes, Americans are unique, but they are a direct extension of that, right? That's the first. The second one is we got to know who the enemy is, and it's this old Praetorian system that controlled and has been in control, et cetera, for a couple thousand years. They've had power here and there, it's up and down, et cetera, but it's the old Praetorians. And then the third thing we need to realize is that they are estrogen-based thinking. They think and wage their conflicts and wars the way estrogen-laden men and women do. And we have to understand that, because otherwise we're looking for some obvious Caesar-like figure, and we're looking for some
It's
obvious masculine head-on-head kind of
and
fight,
it's
and that's
passive aggressive instead, right?
it's
It's
exact
subtle, it's
manipulative,
backhanded, right? Yeah,
coercive. It's
uh-huh.
right, and we've
Uh,
got to understand those three things. If we can do that, and then I would say related to that, to the English civilization part and the estrogen part and the Praetorian part, is we've got to restore the relationship directly between people and princes back to that feudalist mindset, because it's what prevented the Praetorians from having real power for 1,000 years.
so today, is that states? Are we talking about the
I
governors?
think it's got to be right down to the county level. The governors are owned, they're owned by the Praetorians, because again, in the Praetorian system in Rome, governors, generals, senators, all of them had Praetorian guards or Praetorian backing.
Down to the county level, the sheriffs. You're
Down to
talking
the county level, it's got to be your local elites, your local people, because here's the thing. If and when it goes hot kinetic, you don't fight at some mystical,
right.
fragmented national, level. No, that shit's happening in your community, in your streets, in
You're
your
going down to the
block,
police station, and everybody's down there with their shotguns.
right? When it
Yeah,
goes hot, and it is going to go hot, there's no way around it. I know they're trying everything they can, but and maybe they do it somehow. Maybe the old gods come back and say, no, no more, but they haven't so far. Right? It's going to go hot at some point. Well, that you don't fight hot war virtually. It's not Call of Duty. It's going to be in your own streets, in your own homes, in your own communities, your own counties, right? At that level. And you've got to get together with your local elites, the local economy. You need to know who the traders are at your own county level, because they've been investing in that forever.
scary stuff, man. Scary stuff.
Any positive outlook? Any positive predictions, EM?
We've survived.
All
Our
right.
ancestors survived. The Roman imperial family figured, and some of the nobility and some of the others figured out how to set up to where they could have that final Milvian Bridge fight. And they did. That started in the 60s here. Something was set in. This Milvian Bridge like, culmination was set in motion in the 1960s. We're getting to it. That's great. That means that the elites, the right elites, didn't just succumb to the slavery and didn't just allow themselves to be bought off. That's an astounding thing. People are now having these conversations, and information's now more and more readily available. And the the perpetual myth generation engine is breaking down. That means we can talk to one another. We understand economics and finance. We're not peasants anymore, right? We're not just dirty little peasants who don't know nothing and don't have access to sophisticated information. That's all wonderful things. And we've got the GWAT veterans who've been fighting this kind of fight all over the world for 25 years. And we are three different generations, Gen Xers, millennials, and older Zoomers. And we even got some of the the younger boomers involved, right? So we know how to fight these fuckers. We were their
Yeah.
puppets. We were their, right? We did the intelligence. We did the war fighting. We did the subversion. We did the assassinations. We've been doing it, right? Bring it to America, motherfuckers. Bring it. Right? And we're self-sufficient. We're not some part of the world like Libya
Yeah,
or
some
somewhere else that
island.
can't survive by its own. We can do everything. We can grow our own food. We got our own raw materials. We got our own water. We got we got our own fuel, our own energy. We don't need any other part of the world. And we've got two giant oceans, so we don't have to really worry about getting in. We can block the southern border and let's just conquer Canada. That's got to
Be
happen
done.
anyways.
Yeah, just
I
be
want a
done with it.
vacation home up in Saskatchewan anyways. You know what I
Let's
mean?
keep 'em
It's like, so we're
sure.
defensible. So while we're busy fighting this out, they're not going to be able, China's not going to come from the east or the west, and Russia's not going to come, or Europe's not going to come from the east. We're good.
They're going to go after their own local interests.
They got plenty to deal with in their own continent. Plenty to
Well, we're
work out.
collapsing them. We're isolating them as best we can. We're collapsing them on their own.
Yeah.
You fuckers are done living off of us. And I say it like this again, estrogen, right? It's like Europe is like an old socialite lady. She's in her 40s. She's still beautiful. She's already had 3 divorces. She's made millions off of that. This is her last, go
Last
marry
dance.
another rich guy, maybe become a billionaire off of this divorce, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. And she's mean and nasty, and she's got attorneys and private investigators. She probably knows a couple cartel hitmen, and not directly, but through one of her cutouts. She's gonna do all this nasty, ruthless shit because she's looking for that final payday because her beauty's fading. She's never gonna be able to marry a guy of that, right?
Indeed.
What
Indeed.
a great way to put it. For now, we gotta put a pin in it because I have another show in like 45 minutes. I'm actually with Tom Luongo and then Colum and
Yeah. All right.
but yeah,
John, thank you. Always
My
pleasure.
pleasure.
Man.
Thank you. Are you
Yeah.
kidding? I can't thank you enough for this. This is incredibly informative and fascinating. I mean,
no, this
Run
amazing
with it
stuff.
because where your mind goes and the little details, please run with it. I'd love to see what you put
I'll,
out there, etc.
I'll be
Yeah.
connecting some stuff. This is incredible. I can't thank you enough. Tommy, thanks for setting this up.
yeah, of course,
Yeah.
yeah, no, my
Thanks,
pleasure.
Tom.
Yeah, this will probably be up, I think, tomorrow. Or then whatever, I'll get it up. Doesn't matter.
Awesome.
For everybody listening, please go in the description. Please go follow them on Twitter, Patreon, Substack, Subscribe Star, YouTube, blah 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 blah, all that shit. It's all in there. Link to Ian's book is in there as well. And yeah, to both you guys, thank you so much, and we will absolutely do another one.
Thank you,
Appreciate it,
guys.
guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Ian.
Take care.
Guys.